Good morning and welcome to Connect Church Community Online. We're glad that you're with us today. I'm going to be sharing from First Thessalonians chapter 2 and just thinking about a thought. Sometimes you hear people, saying, well, Jesus is getting ready to come back. You need to be ready. And, of course, it's been in the Bible, even here in First Thessalonians. But not just that. On the other side of that is, well, people's been saying that for years. He's not going to come back. Or people's living their life and doing all kinds of things that they might want to do instead of preparing for the Lord. And so Paul here is saying, I don't want to hinder the gospel. I want the gospel, because Jesus is coming back. And we've got to share the gospel, get it in one way or another, whether, we think of preaching, but living and sharing and singing, whatever way that we can get the gospel to the people. Paul is referring to the Gentiles here that were out Jesus. He's trying to reach them, and he's thinking about the ones that he's already reached, and he's excited about that. And so the church at Thessalonica, man, he's praising the Lord for those that have gotten saved. And here, right here in chapter 2, he starts talking about how that these sinners are being filled up with their own sin. Man, I know it's like, man, it kind of sounds real bad right there. In the CSB, he says the result here is that they are constantly being filled up with sin. And it's like if there's like any gap, or it's kind of like saturation in the soil. If the rain keeps coming down or it keeps getting moisture, before long the whole ground is going to be saturated. And it's like there are people whose whole lives are saturated into sin. And he's saying Jesus is going to come back, and we don't need to be a stumbling block. We need to get the gospel out as much as we can. But there it even says here, to the limit. And I'm just thinking, what is the limit on sin? One sin was sent Jesus to the cross, and one sin allows for us the punishment. And it's like, we are sinners, and we have to fight that urge, as it were, to be selfish, or to desire the easy road, or whatever it was. When we begin talking about Jesus and the gospel, sometimes, Paul has run up with all kinds of troubles here for preaching the gospel, for sharing the gospel, and even sacrifices and pain. But he said, I want to get back with you. I said we had to leave in a rush. And he's saying here in verse 18, he said, but Satan hath hindered me from getting back with you. And I'm just thinking, I wonder how much Satan hinders us from sharing the gospel, getting the gospel out. And it's like not just in sharing the gospel, but hindered us in our own lives of doing things that we needed to do. Satan has hindered me or us. And he says, he's talking about, I'm so blessed because of those of you that have gotten saved from the gospel, that was once lost and had turned your back on God. He says, but now, he says, you're my hope, you're my joy, you're my crown. And man, he's excited about those that have gotten saved. But then he said, I'm going to boast in Jesus for that. But at the same time, there are other people, these people that he just talked about, that are filling up with sin. And he's saying, I need to reach them because Jesus is coming back. And do you believe that he's coming back? Well, then we've got to share the gospel. We've got to get the gospel out there. Some are filling up with sin. We need the help. We need to get the gospel. We need to bring the glory back to God. We need to saturate the world with the gospel and, as it were, fill up with Jesus or fill up with the Holy Spirit instead of being in competition with filling up with sin. Because the world, the flesh, and the devil, they're after us. But let me tell you, Jesus is after us. He loves us. He cares about us. And he's coming again to take us away from this sin and this world that is not toward Jesus. May God help you today, and you fight off whatever flesh, the devil, or whatever circumstances that are hurting you.